The Inkatha Freedom Party is proposing a new quota system on the employment of foreign nationals in South Africa. The party says the staggering number of unemployed people compels government to prioritise the 10.6 million jobless South Africans. The IFP will be introducing a private member's bill to Parliament this year with proposals on how to achieve this. The IFP's Mkhuleko Hlengwa joins us in studio now to give us a little bit of clarity on this. Good to have you. Welcome.
Good morning again, and to the viewers.
This is an interesting one. So we're looking at a quota system with regard to the hiring of foreign nationals. So what are you exactly are you going to be tabling, and what will this bill propose?
So the bill is in infancy stage, and what has happened is that we've been receiving quite a number of complaints from South Africans generally about the fact that jobs are not readily available, or that establishments are increasingly employing more foreign nationals than South Africans. And of course, as you rightly say in your intro, we are dealing with 10.6 to 11 million people really who don't have jobs in South Africa. So what we are saying is that we need to categorize therefore the unskilled, semi-skilled and skilled labor force in South Africa. So then we begin to quota that. Of course, where there is a shortage of skills in the country generally, we would be very ignorant not to import those skills. But if you move lower down the spectrum, you find that there's jobs that South Africans can do but are not able to get into those jobs simply because there is a prioritization of foreign nationals. We are investigating the reasons for this, and we do not want to speculate, but what is evident, even I'm sure if you go to a restaurant, the trucking industry and so on, so forth, you recognize that if the people who are employed are foreign nationals. Secondly, what this seeks to do is to really quell the xenophobic tensions which exist in South Africa, because you are finding that unemployed South Africans are viewing in a very dim light the fact that foreign nationals are getting jobs and not them. And so if you are able to integrate the two in a constructive way, you are able to bridge the bridges. Thirdly, the bill wants to focus, and once it comes out, we are dealing with parliamentary legal services in the process of drafting. So the next 3 months to 4 months when it actually does come out, one of the things that it will really seek to do is to push the Department of Home Affairs, amongst other things, to ensure that the registration of foreign nationals is done in a manner which inspires public confidence and preserves the integrity of the movement of people. So we are really trying to make sure that there is a coordinated and structured approach to the placement of people in jobs.
Okay, let's question a couple of the issues in there. You're saying that you're doing a little bit of investigation to see why it is that you'll walk into some institutions like restaurants, other hospitality hotels, and you see predominantly foreign nationals working there. What does your intuition tell you? Is it because it's cheap labor?
Well, that would be one of the things, and that would be very. That should be one of the things, and it would be very irresponsible and reckless if we were actually going to subject foreign nationals to cheap labor and to allow businesses to take advantage of the dire living conditions of foreign nationals who have come to South Africa really not because it was nice to leave home, but because the circumstances back home are just that dire. So there is a need for businesses to also be responsible. But also, Leanne, what is important here is that this is not without precedent on the continent, just as an example as well. And of course, as you go across the world,
it's across the world.
Yeah, you look, Angola is speaking about a 70-30 split. Nigeria, President Buhari has said that, look, if we've got the skills, the foreign nationals in Nigeria should not be employed in those spaces. You're looking at Ghana as well. So and of course, there's also the free trade agreement that has been signed, which is going to make very fluid the employment of people on the continent as well about these things. And so there is a need really for South Africa to introspect in the collective interest, and for South Africans to actually benefit from the heavy investments that we make in the hospitality industry, as you say, amongst others. And so we are really saying, let's develop those skills and place South Africans in jobs and allow them to work in a holistic manner, side by side with foreign nationals.
So, as you mentioned, certain countries have different quota systems. You are proposing an 80-20, so 80% South Africans, 20% foreign nationals in any given organisation.
Well, it will be staggered because this, if done responsibly, needs to run parallel to the skills assessment of the country. So we cannot be rigid insofar as the quota simply because the quota is fixed. The quota needs to be consistent with what South Africa needs. So the upgrading really of the skills register is one thing that actually needs to happen as well in South Africa so that we know who we're bringing in. So that's why I was saying this is something we need to do very responsibly and very carefully. But what is important, and the principle we're not going to compromise on, is that every establishment in South Africa will need and have to employ a majority of South Africans. If we're speaking about foreign direct investment, we are sourcing that investment for the benefit of South Africa. We are not saying that if you want to invest in South Africa, bring a wholesale employees. Yeah. Of course, we're not going to meddle with your management and so on. But even at that management level, it is our expectation that you actually have a diversification of people so that you are able to respond to the South African realities and South African dynamics.
Is there any form of a system in place right now? I mean, because it's very difficult to even know how many foreign nationals are living and working in South Africa. Yeah. Home Affairs, unfortunately, doesn't even have that documentation, which is a problem. But currently, within organizations, is there a quota system that yet you know of?
Well, there are certain sections and pieces of laws everywhere, very scattered in the South African law regiment. And part of this bill, of course, is to go and extract those things. Just on Monday, I was meeting with our in-house legal representatives of the IFP to begin a discussion about this, because this proposal emanates out of the parliamentary caucus workshop held last week. And so now we are kicking in, setting into motion this process. The bill will be piloted by Honourable Liesl van der Merwe, who's on the Home Affairs Portfolio Committee, with the assistance of Honourable Xolani Ngwezi, who's on the Portfolio Committee of Unemployment and Labour. And of course, the rest of the caucus will be supporting it. And we will be having discussions with the other political parties as well, because what we are saying is that we need to draw from the various experiences and policy positions of political parties in Parliament. And of course, we'll be engaging with South Africans and the citizenry. We are wanting to engage the NGOs and the business sector to say how best can we enhance the positiveness of this bill so that it actually delivers on stability and ensure that South Africans are in jobs.
So many people would listen and think in principle and on paper it may be a good idea, but in reality a lot of African countries look to South Africa as a very xenophobic country, and I know that that's a difficult word to swallow, because so many people deny it, and yet the actions speak a lot louder than words of your South African on the street and the way that foreign nationals are treated. Won't something like this make the situation even worse and even more tense?
No. In fact, xenophobia becomes a runaway train if you do not have the necessary interventions to actually bring people together. With this bill, we are saying that we can and are able to create a conducive and enabling environment for cooperation and side-by-side living of the people in South Africa. Secondly, this is not without precedent, as I'm saying, on the continent as well and around the world. Thirdly, in our view, this is a patriotic action step, because fundamentally, and we have to secure primarily the collective interests of South Africans first. They have to benefit and so on. Secondly, or thirdly, you raised the issue earlier on about Home Affairs and the registration of people. There is an absolute need for Home Affairs to actually step up and to shape up and to get its house in order, because that is also part of the problem that we have. But in our view, as the IFP, and of course we condemn any action of xenophobia and violence, and we certainly believe that this action step, this private members bill, is going to bring people to the booth. We're going to enter into a discussion with South Africans, including foreign nationals, on the best possible ways to structure the placement of people in the workplace.
So if in fact something like this does go through, I mean, I know this is nowhere near anywhere at this point in time. It's an idea. We're still in the discussion process. But thinking it out carefully, what would happen to foreign nationals that are employed, that currently do have employment, but the company they work for does not meet this quota system? will then they be pushed out?
No, of course, we can't be retrospective. That would be inconsistent with even the fundamental realities of human rights. But what is important is that companies and businesses and establishments and government will be expected to comply. And of course, the introduction of this will be a phase-in approach, because this is not to really antagonize foreign nationals or to isolate them. But what it does do is to say, let us bring South Africans back at the center of development, of service and opportunity. I mean, we every year we are churning out matriculants who are passing. I mean, the matric pass rate went up. We can discuss the merits and demerits of the quality of those passes. You've got unemployed graduates in South Africa. And what we are saying is that it is impossible for us to assume that we do not have the skill set of South Africans to be in jobs.
Yeah. When we talk about foreign nationals, generally a lot of people loosely look at the term as black Africans that are coming into the country looking for work. It's not always the case, though.
It's not the case.
Not at all.
And as far as we are concerned, this is going to be across the globe.
Yeah.
It's a global imperative for us to do. But, Leanne, I think for the longest of time, that mission must be made, is that South Africans are consistently finding themselves having to accommodate everybody and take the back foot. And our reality really is the social grant system is not sustainable. Amongst other things. And the majority of the people on those social grants, the 17 million, are South Africans. So what we are saying is that let us refocus South Africans towards jobs so that we can be able to reduce the levels of dependency. So this seeks to address quite a number of things, including but not limited to clarifying the question around xenophobia. And as you rightly say, we are not targeting Africans. I think that must be very clear.
Very important.
And secondly, it's not targeting any other person, really. What it's saying is South Africans need to be at the center of opportunities.
I mean, we talk about this. This is a practice that is done in many other African countries. You already gave us the idea of some of them. But I mean, I know Nigeria do it, Angola do it, Ghana do it. And it works for them?
Well, we are going to be doing the assessment, but as far as we are concerned, there is merit in the action steps. I mean, just last year one was in Nigeria, and you begin to see the extent of the productivity of Nigerians, and you recognize that the economy is growing because the backbone of the economy is Nigerians in work. And that is very, very important. So there are pockets of excellence really about this. And you look at Ghana as well. I mean, one of the things that Ghana has done is that there is a member of parliament who is a minister equivalent responsible for compliance, amongst other things, for these things, and ensuring that there are linkages insofar as the economic sector is concerned and people plugging into those opportunities. So there are areas where we will actually want to borrow best practice from around the world, really, so that this works. What I do want to clarify, though, is that this must not for 1 second be seen through the lens of the Make America Great narrative again, which prevails in the US, which is really, instead of bringing people together, has pitted people together, because, I mean, it's been along racial lines, it's been along the lines of an isolationist kind of approach. Here we are saying that let us find a way which is going to ensure that we are able to accommodate everybody, but without compromising South Africans.
Yeah. So, again, it brings up a conversation about the skills shortage in South Africa. And a lot of the times, unfortunately, due to the downfall of our education system, we lack those skills. So we depend on foreigners to come in with their skills to assist and help in many different companies at different levels. That you're saying,
Definitely.
We're not just focusing on one level of an employee. We're looking across the board here. That's what I gather that you're proposing.
Definitely.
This is from a CEO all the way down to the working class. So let's talk about that. I mean, our education system has to up its game, and we have to give the skills, the right skills, to South Africans.
Most definitely, and I fully agree with you. The IFP is concerned about the quality of our education system, and as you may have seen, the statement we issued after the release of the matric results is to say, whilst we may celebrate the quantity of the pass, do we actually take the time to look at the quality of that pass? Will it deliver us what is required by the job market? I mean, you you look at the maths and science disparities that are there. You look at the fact that we are speaking about the fourth industrial revolution, but the education system does not seem to be responding to those dynamics. And so there is really a need fundamentally to overhaul the education system and to benchmark it anew against international best practice, and not just churn out matriculants for the simple reality of churning them out. But what is also important for us to look at is that the immediate gains is to say is certainly there is no basis for us to assume that there's jobs that South Africans can't do right now. I mean, I went just in this December holiday, I went to a restaurant in Cape Town, which for now shall remain nameless. And the entire establishment of that restaurant was foreign nationals. Now, I mean, really, South Africans are if to say that they can't waiter, I mean, those are the kind of things which then create problems. We are not saying that, of course, we are only viewing South Africans from the lens of only doing those jobs, but there is a need for South Africans to be in those spaces. As I'm saying, we are pumping millions and millions of rands into tourism into this country, for this country, and really the South African experience should not find itself, or for tourists rather, without South Africans in the spaces that matter. And so that is why we need to look at the skill set, we need to look at the capabilities, but fundamentally the education system needs to respond to the needs of the job market. And that is why it needs to be continuously improved, and that is why there's need for new innovation and new ideas pumped into that education system. But finally, on the education system, we need to put in the necessary resources, the infrastructure, and build up the capabilities and capacities of our teachers. And amongst other things, that means reintroducing teacher colleges so that teachers can be trained along the lines of what is needed currently.
Yeah, indeed. Some people talking here, and it's quite interesting to see what some are saying. And one or two tweets saying, you know what, foreign nationals work. Locals are lazy and they won't do the jobs.
That is a very unfair generalization.
I want you to hear.
I'll tell you why. If you were to take me now and plant me in any country, all I have in that space is to work.
Yeah.
And so the disparity, of course, is along those lines. Secondly, South Africans, for all intents and purposes, deserve jobs. And yes, we recognize the need to inculcate a culture of discipline and professionalism in the workforce in South Africa in general. This includes government, frontline departments, for example, to treat people with the necessary dignity and the necessary care. So, yes, where there are criticisms, let's respond to them. But what would be a mistake is to make a blanket generalization about South Africans, whereas the desperation of our people is evident for everyone to see.
Yeah, interesting, because I mean, I think that is, it is an idea, and I think one could say a myth, because you cannot paint every South African.
There's no basis, really. It's an assumption.
Yeah. There's one question I need to ask you, because aside from the quota system, it's quite interesting what you were proposing here is an independent commission to be appointed that can make reports like the public protector makes reports to Parliament. So you're recommending that. Can you tell me about that? What are you saying?
What we are saying is that we want an integrity commission, and it arises out of the fact that there is a loophole in the checks and balances of government officials, politicians, ourselves included, members of Parliament, in terms of what we do and our conduct. The Zondo Commission has been the clearest indication yet that there are lapses in oversight. Now, the public protector then office has found itself drawn into dealing with these things, much to the neglect of what its intended purpose was, to be, the champion of the ordinary man in the street,
of the public, as opposed to MPs and politicians.
Exactly, in governance. So what we are saying is to say, let us allow the public protector to continue in that space, and the ethics committee in Parliament has a short compromise, but a very significant one, that it's a jury of peers and may find itself subjected to politicking. And so we need to ensure that we build in checks and balances which will ensure that if there needs to be recourse on the findings of what the ethics committee makes, there is a way to benchmark. And secondly, a continuous watchdog, independent of government and governance and politics, so that we can be able to push back on the frontiers of corruption, maladministration, and all the other nonsense that currently prevailed and has prevailed. Because hindsight is the best sight. There are significant lessons we need to learn from the 9 wasted years, and so chief amongst them is to say, let us create a Chapter 9 institution which will be independent and be able to safeguard the collective interests of South Africans insofar as government is concerned.
We leave it there. Interesting conversation.
And absolutely,
this morning.
Thank you very much to you and the viewers.
Such a joy talking to
Thank
IFP
you.
spokesperson and Member of Parliament, Mkhuleko Hlengwa, giving us clarity on the party's proposed approach. And this is towards dealing with unemployment by government, creating a quota system for employment of foreign nationals. All right, we'd love to hear from you at Morning Live, SABC. Give us your views. It's Wednesday, 22nd of January, just gone 7 o'clock. News with Sakina.